Welcome back, everyone. Hope you guys had a nice weekend. I did. My younger daughter turned 2 yesterday, so happy birthday to you, Miss Maisie. Can't believe she's already 2. My older one's in first grade. So, from the rain we had on Saturday, the clam flats are closed, so I'm out of work for a couple days. So, to keep myself from going into a deep state of boredom, I decided to make you guys a video. And like I like to do when I make these midweek videos, sometimes when I have some extra time, I like to do it non-mob related. So I decided let's make a video on the 10 most dangerous cities in Massachusetts. It was either this or clean my apartment. So naturally, I chose to make the video instead of cleaning my apartment because who likes to clean their apartment? I certainly don't. And if you walk into my apartment, you can tell that I don't. But anyhow, and also on my days off, I don't know how to relax. I'm one of those people that can't just chill and enjoy a day off. Usually, I just pace around my apartment stressing out about how I'm probably not gonna be able to pay my rent on the first because of the rain closure and the ridiculous price of everything else. So I don't know. I decided to make a video and I try to do this every once in a while, make a video that's non-mob related, and usually nobody watches it. So hey, let's keep trying, huh? Let's keep shoveling sand against the tide. So this might be kind of a silly topic to some people, the 10 most dangerous cities in Massachusetts, because Massachusetts overall is one of the safest states in the United States. When you're looking at like averages, the state average of violent crimes per 100,000 residents is much lower than the national average. The national average is 369 per 100,000 residents, and the state of Massachusetts is 322 per 100,000. Now, I'm going to be doing this throughout this video, spouting off these like mathematical equations and formulas. Like I have the slightest idea what any of these mean or like how they figure out the actual crime rates in any of these cities. Now, I know they obviously have to have actual formulas and math to figure out the crime rates and to rank the cities and the states in the United States and stuff like that. But a lot of them I feel like aren't completely accurate. Like when I was researching and looking online, like to see what were actually the most violent cities in Massachusetts, like Webster and North Adams were like always up towards the top of the list. But neither one of those towns in that year had one murder in it. How can you be the most dangerous town or city in the state and not have one murder? They have like per capita, they have a high violent crime rate per capita, but they're small towns. It doesn't really like if you drive through North Adams and then go drive through like Fall River or Brockton, like they have North Adams or Webster above like Fall River and Brockton and New Bedford and like real like tough cities that have reputations in Massachusetts. So if like, you drive in one of those cities compared to all you have to do is drive through the city and realize that it's a more dangerous town. You know what I mean? I guess the point I'm trying to make without rambling on too much about it is that math is only so much a part of this. Like obviously, like I said, to make the list and to have like official things where it's not just opinions, they have to have math figured in to like figure out these crime rates, but it only goes so far because if you just go walk around in some of these towns or cities or take a drive through, you can tell that there's cities that are lower on the list. But you feel like you would feel much safer, I feel like walking around in North Adams than you would walking around in parts of Fall River, New Bedford, Brockton, Chelsea. That's the point I'm trying to make without rambling on too much about it. So without further ado, let's get into this list here. Now I'm gonna just let you guys know a little spoiler alert in the beginning. The majority of these cities on the list are in the western part of the state. Now, if you look at the actual lists online, almost all the cities, there's a couple that aren't, but almost the majority of the cities are out in the western part of the state. The western part of the state is obviously much more depressed than the eastern part of the state. Like the Boston metro area is very wealthy. The North Shore is very wealthy. Like the western suburbs are very wealthy of Boston. But then when you get out past Worcester, it really starts to become a much different state. Like the western part of the state of Massachusetts is completely different from the eastern part of the state. It's even different how they talk. Like I've talked about in videos before, like out in Springfield and stuff like that, they have completely different accents. But the western part of the state was more industrial, mill towns and mill cities, and those industries dried up like in the 1960s and 70s. And since then, it's just been kind of not a very nice place to live. Obviously, there's still nice communities out there, and I'm not saying like the whole western part of the state is a dump. That's not true. There's wealthy, nice, like the Berkshires are beautiful. Um, but let's get into it here. So number 10 on the list is Pittsfield, Massachusetts, and that's out there. And that's actually the seat of Berkshire County, and it's like the only decent size. The population of Pittsfield is 41,865, so that would be considered like a medium-sized city. Uh, It's the third largest city actually in the western part of the state, though. But like I said, like out there in the Berkshires, it's very rural, very country. It's beautiful. I remember I went the trip with my family a couple of years ago in the summer with my older daughter and her mom, and we went out there and we are gonna go hiking and stuff, but it rained the whole time. And the only city that was like in the area was Pittsfield. So we ended up going to Pittsfield like the whole time we were there and going to, like this little shopping center was there. But you could tell when you were driving around Pittsfield that like you'd be in like a decent looking neighborhood, and then all of a sudden you'd go a couple streets over and things would be turned very depressed. There was a decent amount of like abandoned buildings and homes, and you could just see like when you would go into certain neighborhoods that they were more run down and that there was like a kind of a seedier element in the city. But overall, it's really like not that bad compared to like the national averages of things. Um, their overall violent crime rate is 12.66, which is even kind of like not that bad for Massachusetts. They only had one murder, and the most of the latest statistics I could find, like crime statistics on the cities and towns, were from 2021. So for that year, they only had one murder. You have there was 6.59. See, like these math things, I don't even understand what that means. 6.59 per capita. The violent crimes per capita was 6.59. So I don't know if that's when you factor into how many there were per 100,000 residents. I think that's what how they figure out the per capita for violent crimes. But coming in at number nine on the list is the only entry from my county, from Essex County, which I was honestly surprised about because um, not really that there was only one city on the list from Essex County, because overall Essex County is like become one of the nicer counties probably in Massachusetts. It's got some of the wealthier communities in the state, I'm sure. Overall, it's a very safe place to live, but there are a few bad cities in the county. And honestly, I thought one of two cities would be the top city in the county, but I was surprised. The actual most dangerous city in Essex County is Haverhill, Massachusetts. And I actually used to live in Haverhill back in like 2011. I lived there for like I don't know, less than a year. I didn't live there very long, but I lived like in the worst part of Haverhill, one of the worst parts of Haverhill. I think maybe like High Street up there is probably like the actual worst part. But I lived on Winter Street, like across from Bradford Seafood in that big brick building. And right behind there was like Nickel Street and then like the acres up in there. And that's like a real rough neighborhood. And I don't know, I mean, I'm from Gloucester, and Gloucester's, now it's a very nice city, but back in the 90s and stuff, Gloucester was still kind of a tough town. It was a fishing city and stuff. But I remember when I was in Haverhill and I was walking around at nighttime, it was a little sketchy. So I'm not surprised that that made the list. But honestly, I thought Lynn or Lawrence would make the list instead. I thought they would rank higher than Haverhill. I thought that those two cities, one of those two cities, would be the most violent or dangerous in Essex County because they're traditionally the two most dangerous cities. Like Lawrence is out in Merrimack Valley, and then Lynn is down in like the southern part of Essex County, like about 15 minutes north of Boston. But those are like the seats of all the trouble in the county. Like when you go to Middleton, the jail for Essex County, the majority of people there are members of street organizations from those two cities. So again, I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised because I used to live in Haverhill and I know Haverhill is a rough town. But I'm surprised that it wasn't Lynn or Lawrence. And really, I'm kind of shocked at Lawrence because whether or not they're underreporting what's going on in Lawrence or if it's just gotten better. I haven't really been in Lawrence because I've been making better choices in my life, so I don't really go around that anymore. But Lawrence was like way down on the list. Haverhill was up in the top 10. Then came Lynn was second. Lynn was like ranked like 18, I think, and then Salem was right after Lynn as number 20. And I've talked about before in videos that I made that there's like this one notorious neighborhood in Salem, Mass, called the Point, and that's where like most of the action goes down. And it's really like a rough neighborhood. Like if you're in the Point, you would think that you're in any other large city in the country. You wouldn't think that it's just Salem, Mass, but it went Haverhill, Lynn, Salem, and then Lawrence. Lawrence was like all the way down the list at like 28 or 29. It was almost 30. So like I said, I don't know if it's some underreporting going on or if things in Lawrence are actually getting better because Lawrence was like a real, it's just been a bad city. You know, it's like the drug capital of New England as far as I'm considered. But of course, my mindset's probably a little different because I'm from Essex County and I've been to Middleton and all that stuff. So Haverhill has a population of 67,787. So it's a decent sized city. You know, it's bigger than a medium-sized city, I'd say. And the crime rate is 1,472 per 100,000. That's 8% more than the state average. And like I said, their overall crime rate, like Pittsfield was 12.66. Haverhill is way higher than that. Haverhill is 22.53. And honestly, that's like number 3 or 4 overall in the state for crime rate. So that's a very high crime rate. But I just put Haverhill a little bit further down the list because of like the violent crimes that happen in Haverhill, a little bit lower than some of the other cities on the list. So that's why I didn't put Haverhill like up higher, like at like 5 or 6. But their overall crime rate is one of the highest in the state. It's like third or fourth in the state. There was only one murder in 2021. Like I said, that's why I put it a little lower in the list because got to factor in all these things: overall crime rate versus violent crime rate. So that's why I put Haverhill at number 9. But like I said, the only entry from Essex County from my county, which is, I don't know, I got kids, so I guess that's a good thing. But I just wish that it wasn't so expensive to live here. But that's not the topic we're discussing. So number 8 on the list is Worcester, Massachusetts. Welcome to Worcester, $1.25, please. Worcester wasn't even on any of the lists that I found. Like that was when I was researching and looking up. Worcester wasn't on one list for the top 10 most dangerous cities in Massachusetts. Um, I don't care. I'm putting Worcester in there and I'm putting it in at number 8. I'm not even gonna put it at number 10 because dude, Worcester is a tough city. Uh, South Main, that like neighborhood and the valley, the Spanish guys call it Tacoma. That is like some of the most notorious I don't want to talk too graphically about it because YouTube doesn't like me when I talk about stuff like that. But there is a lot of narcotics in the city, and those neighborhoods are rife with them. And organizations that sell them and battle over their territory are also very prevalent in this city. And Worcester's just a big city. Worcester's the second largest city in Massachusetts with 184,850 people residing in the city. Their overall violent crime rate is 17.74, which is one of the higher ones in the state. Um, there was 9 murders in the year of 2021, which gives it the third most in the city after 2 other cities. And I'm not going to say right now. You can probably figure it out if you live in this state. But Worcester, like I said, it's always had a reputation as being a tough city. Those neighborhoods that I named um, ring bells throughout the state. I don't know. I was kind of shocked that Worcester wasn't on the list, so I put it there. Their violent crime rate per capita is 6.52, which is higher, which is just under Pittsfield, which is, I don't see, that's what I'm saying, that these math equations don't make sense. If you go walk down South Main in that neighborhood in Worcester and then go walk around Pittsfield, you tell me which is a more dangerous city. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. Math only goes so far in this stuff. So that's why I'm making it's one of the reasons why I'm making this video also because I just think it's like mildly entertaining and people might actually watch it. But it's because I don't think a lot of these lists are that accurate. I'm saying like go take a walk around in some of these cities or go take a drive and then you tell me which city is more dangerous. So it's violent crime rate per capita is higher than Haverhill, but lower than Pittsfield. But for whatever that's worth. Number 7, Fall River, Massachusetts. You know Fall River, which I a lot of these cities too, if they're probably because of the censuses and stuff. I saw it ranked at 94,000, and then I've seen it also up to around right around 100,000 residents. Um, Either way, Fall River is the 10th largest city in Massachusetts. It's down in Bristol County. Two of the most notorious cities that are in Bristol County are Fall River and New Bedford, both very notorious cities with crazy reputations, um, very well earned. majority of people from um, the city from Fall River, from Portuguese descent. There's a large Hispanic population as well, but it's traditionally been a Portuguese town. There is a giant I don't know what it's like a Navy base, whatever. They have Battleship Cove down there. And I remember as a Cub Scout, I think every Cub Scout in Massachusetts, we did like the sleepover on the battleships when I was a little kid. And I remember going down there, and they have all like these cool old like World War II era battleships all parked down there. And I remember that as a kid. That was fun going and doing that with like my whole Cub Scout troop. We did like the sleepover. I think my father was one of the chaperones, like the scout leaders, and he probably was ready to ended after that night of us all running around the battleship terrorizing everybody. The Fall River is a rough city. It's got a real bad narcotics problem. It's rife with crime. It just got like a really bad reputation. Back in the 1990s, Fall River had one of the highest HIV. I don't know, like there was more people with HIV. It had one of the highest percentages and concentrations in the Western Hemisphere besides Haiti, um, because of the narcotics problem in the city. And pre 2000s, you couldn't get clean. I don't know. Can I say this stuff on YouTube? You couldn't get fresh work at like a pharmacy. Like now you can go into Walgreens. I don't know if people know what I'm saying about my works. I think most people do. It's something that an addict has to use to do his business every day. But you can go in the pharmacy now and show your ID and get a clean set. Back in the day, you could not. So there was all types of like diseases like HIV and hepatitis C that would just spread and rife. And Fall River used to have one of the highest concentrations in the Western Hemisphere. I don't know if a lot of people know that. Gloucester, Massachusetts also did as well in the 80s and 90s. But anyway, Fall River had three murders in the year of 2021. Their violent crime rate per capita is much higher than the other three cities I was just talking about. The other three cities I was just talking about were in the sixes. Fall River's violent crime rate per capita is 9.75. You have a 1 in 51 chance of being a victim of violent crime in the city of Fall River. So that basically equates to out of 50, if there's 51 people walking in the street, one of you is going to get whacked. That's a pretty high concentration. Not like whacked, but just like, going to get salted. So the home of NBA, really an NBA legend, but the guy Chris Herron, he was like a star basketball player from Fall River, and he ended up went and playing the Celtics. And anybody who's been to Detox in the state of Massachusetts, anybody who's been to like Danvers Cab or Boston Cab, I'm guaranteeing you've watched like the video on Chris Herron's life and how he talks about how he was like in his Celtics warm ups getting ready for a game, and he had to like run outside the Boston Garden to go pop from some guy so he could get his fix before the game. But Chris Herron, the home of Fall River. Fall River is 46% their violent crime rate per capita, and their overall crime rate is 46% higher than the state average. So Fall River is it's a rough town. Nobody's gonna dispute that. So coming up next on the list, number six, Brockton, Massachusetts. The only entry from Plymouth County in Massachusetts, which is Plymouth County is a tough county. I believe Taunton is also in Plymouth County. Taunton's a tough city. Taunton was surprising though. Taunton was like all the way like in the 40s on most of like the some of the lists I saw. They were very very low. I always thought Taunton to be a tough city unless it's kind of cleaned up. And Plymouth itself too. Which I believe Plymouth is the seat of Plymouth County, I think. But Plymouth is a kind of it's got some rough areas. It's a bigger city than I thought it was. My older daughter and her mom lived very, very briefly for like a couple months in Plymouth, and I was a little surprised at what it was like down there. But Brockton, um, it's just notorious. I think that no matter what in the future happens with the city of Brockton, it would probably always be on the top 10 of this. No matter what the stats are, is basically I'm saying. Whatever math tells you, Brockton, just I don't think people can erase the thought of Brockton being a bad city or ever think that Brockton would be like a nice place to live and raise children and a safe place to live. So Brockton is a city of 100,516, so it's a pretty decent sized city. It's within the top 10 largest cities in Massachusetts. There's a few cities that are around a population of 100,000, but then there's very few that go like higher than that, like with Springfield and Worcester and Boston. Boston is by far the largest city in Massachusetts, like no other city. The second largest city, Worcester, is like 400,000 residents, smaller than Boston. But Brockton has an 18.32 violent crime rate per capita. So that's actually lower than Fall River, but it's higher than all the other, it's higher than Worcester, Pittsfield, and Haverhill, the other cities we talked about on this list. Um, in the year of 2021, there was 675 violent crimes and 8 murders. So that's pretty high. That's just one less than Fall River. There was a few cities in the state that all had the same amount of eight in the same year, 2021. Brockton's one of those cities. So that's the third highest amount. No, sorry, that's the fourth highest amount. Fall River with nine had the third highest, but so eight, that's pretty sizable for a city of only 100,000 people. It's a decent amount. You have much higher chance, actually. That's strange. I'm like confusing myself with all these numbers and stuff. There's only 3 murders in Fall River in 2021. There was 8 murders in Brockton in 2021. So that's a sizable difference. And that's why I put Brockton up higher up on the list. Brockton's overall violent crime rate is a little bit lower, but it's Brockton. It's a pretty mixed city. There's large Hispanic population. There's actually one of the largest Cape Verdean populations besides like the Upham's Corner neighborhood in Dorchester, which is the highest concentration of Cape Verdeans in Massachusetts. Brockton is the second, and it's one of the highest concentration of Cape Verdeans really like in the world. There's almost as many Cape Verdeans in Massachusetts as there is in the actual country of the island chains of Cape Verde. It's a little fun fact. So Brockton is coming in at number 6. Number 5, the most violent and dangerous city in Suffolk County, and it is not Boston. It's Chelsea, aka El Salvador, which isn't hard to figure out. There's a very large Central American population in Chelsea. That's kind of like a derogatory nickname that people call Chelsea. It's just it's tradition since like the 1990s. It's had a huge concentration of Latinos, especially Central Americans from El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras. So Chelsea's really not that big of a city. It's only got a population of 40,787 residents, which makes it really just like a medium-sized city. It's about the same size as Salem or Beverly, like medium-sized North Shore cities. But Chelsea is a very bad city. It's right across the Mystic River from Boston. It's directly north of Boston. There was 292 violent crimes and only 2 murders, but for a city of 40,000, that's it. That counts more. So, and there was 2,048 crimes per 100,000 residents, and that's 50% higher than the state average. And their overall crime rate per capita is 20.97, so that's higher than Brockton, just under Fall River, but it's pretty high. It ranks up there in the state, and just Chelsea is just a very bad city. So, like I said, it is the most dangerous per capita per residence. Obviously, there's much more actual crimes that happen in the city of Boston, but the city of Boston is over 600,000 people compared to the city of Chelsea, which is only 40,000. So it does rank as the most dangerous city in Suffolk County, and I put it in at number 5 on my list. And that is just that, folks. So coming in at number 4, I had to put it in the list, like, if it's like I said before when I started this video, North Adams and Webster, like the majority of these lists that are compiled by people that are just putting like the mathematical statistics and probably people that don't even live in Massachusetts, they kept putting up North Adams and Webster at the top of the list. So I put North Adams in at 4 because it does have the crime rate per capita in North Adams is 29.91 per 100,000 residents, which is like crazy. Like I was saying, like Brockton's only 18.32. Fall River is 22.02. So 29, what is that? What did I say it was again? 29.91 That's a very high number. That's above the state average. That's like even high, I think, for like national averages. But North Adams is a very small town. There's only 12,961 people in North Adams. That's not even half the size of the city of Gloucester that I live in. And Gloucester is a small city, so that's what I'm saying is like if you go take a walk or drive around North Adams, yeah, it's kind of there's definitely like it's a kind of a seedy little town. So I'm saying about these towns out in Western Mass, like these old North Adams is a cool town though too. I think like when we were out there in the Berkshires, I wanted to drive and go drive through North Adams because I've seen pictures of it. And I went there when I was a little kid, and I don't know. I love like I'm a weirdo. Like I love like the architecture and stuff of like these old mill towns that were like built in the 1800s and stuff, and like the cool downtowns. You know how they're all built with all the buildings on Main Street and stuff like that. And North Adams is just one of those type of towns, and I think it's a cool town to go drive through, and you can tell there's like a seedy element, and there's a lot of the economy kind of stinks down there. There's not much work for people. It's a very depressed community. I'm sure there's a lot of narcotics, just like there's everywhere out in the western part of the state. There's narcotics everywhere now, but traditionally, though, down these old industrial mill towns in the western part of the state are, rife with these type of problems. The economic depression, the narcotics, crime, they all go hand in hand. So North Adams, like I said, it's a small town. It ranks like on the top of the list on almost all the lists or right near the top. So I put it in at 4. I really don't think it really belongs so high up on the list, but just to be kind of like to give my list of some sense of legitimacy to the numbers. I put it in there this high. You have a 1 in 33 chance of being a victim of crime in North Adams. And like I said, it's got a really high rate 3,114 per 100,000 residents. And that's like I said, 29.91, which is a very high number comparatively to the other cities on the list. So North Adams is in there, but like I said, I would rather live in North Adams than live in Fall River or Brockton, uh, Chelsea, which are better on the list mathematically, but I would rather live in North Adams, live in those cities. So number 3 on the list now, getting down to the nitty gritty here, the top 3. This is the only one out of the top 3 that is not in the western part of the state. I'm just going to say this right now. Number 3 is New Bedford, aka New Beige. Stronghold in Massachusetts, besides Fall River, the two biggest cities down in Bristol County, just like right across the bay from like the nice Cape Cod, which is kind of funny. Uh, I think there's like some sort of I think there's like an old football rivalry between New Bedford and Falmouth, and my ex girlfriend was from Falmouth. She was from like the really nice neighborhood in Falmouth called Woods Hole, and I don't think it's kind of funny because it's like polar opposites, New Bedford and Falmouth, like the uppity Cape Cod people compared to like the tough blue collar people of New Bedford. But New Bedford's a lot like Fall River. Like I said, big concentration of Portuguese. That was the biggest ethnic group in New Bedford. There's a lot of Hispanic people there now, Puerto Rican, Dominican. Big problem with crime down there, narcotics as well. New Bedford's a pretty big city. It's 94,886. It's basically the same. Fall River and New Bedford are very, very similar. But New Bedford, one difference with New Bedford is they still have a very thriving fishing industry. It's actually the biggest fishing port in Massachusetts by far. Like Gloucester can't even compare to New Bedford now. New Bedford's actually invested in the fishing industry and supported the fishing industry, unlike Gloucester, which has done everything to try to kill the fishing industry. But let's not get into that. But so there's actually some work in New Bedford still for people, but I don't know how many people that live in the actual city are employed through the fishing industry. I know as well because there's a lot of guys from Gloucester that travel down to New Bedford and fish off of boats down there and go offshore lobster and scalloping and doing stuff like that because there's just not enough work in Gloucester anymore for work and fishermen. But like I said, it's a decent sized city. It ranges between like I've seen it at 94,000. I've also seen it listed at 102,000. So depending on like what year the flux is in the census, it could be bigger than Fall River or a little bit smaller than New Fall River, but they're around the same population. Now, New Bedford had 618 violent crimes 2021 and 5 murders. So for a city of 94,000, that's a decent amount. It has a 6.51 per capita violent crime rate per 100,000 residents, which is higher than a lot of the other cities on the list. Looking at the numbers, perhaps New Bedford um, shouldn't be this high up on the list, but hey, I put it up there. I feel like you can't have all Western cities on the top of the list. It's just not fair. We got to give Eastern Massachusetts a little bit of love. And no, I don't think anybody is going to dispute the fact that New Bedford's a tough city or is a violent or dangerous city. So coming in at number two on the list, I'm sure most of you guys can figure out which one is going to be number one, but maybe this one is still a bit of a mystery to you. So number two, Holyoke. What is the smell coming from Holyoke? Is it the paper mills or is it all the dangerous violent crime? A city of 40,326, a medium sized city, not a very high population, but very, very violent. In the year 2021, there was 387 violent crimes and 8 murders. So that's kind of crazy for a city of 40,000. Like that's the same size, and it's like I said, like it's almost the exact same population as Chelsea. So, if you're from the North Shore area, like that's the same size as like cities like Beverly and Salem, small, medium-sized cities. 8 murders is a lot of murders for a small town like that. The year before, they only had 2 murders, but there's basically at least a murder or two every year in Holyoke. It has a terrible, terrible narcotics problem. The economy is completely depressed. The main industry in Holyoke throughout the 19th and 20th century were paper mills. They started shutting down in the 1960s, and by the 1970s, they were pretty much all gone. Um, the majority of people in Holyoke are, living. I'm not going to go into that stuff, but it's a very depressed community, high Hispanic population. There's a lot of gangs, violence, narcotics. It's just a pretty nasty city. I would not want to live in Holyoke. I would not want to raise my family in Holyoke. You have a 1 in 31 chance of being a victim of violent crime in Holyoke. So if I were you guys, I would avoid Holyoke and drive around it if you have to. I mean, I don't really think there's any reason to go to Holyoke unless you're going to cop or unless you're gonna go do a drive-by. Now for the moment you guys have all waited for. The most dangerous city in Massachusetts. Number one on our list. As if it's a mystery. But to anybody watching this, anybody that lives in Massachusetts, it's not a mystery. It's basically, no matter what the lists say for like the past 10, 15, 20 years, it's been the same city every year. So what do you guys think? What do you think it's going to be? Springfield, Mass. Shocking. Shocking. The third most populous city in Massachusetts behind Worcester and Boston. Springfield, a population of 154,000, 98 residents. The crime rate of 34.63 per 100,000 residents. That's the violent crime rate, which is like North Adams, which is number two on the list, is what was it? 29.91. New Bedford is 29.88. Uh, Haverhill, which is pretty high, was 22.53. But Springfield is 34.63. It's like not even close. There was 5,337 violent crimes. With like the closest to that, the second closest was like 3,000 and something. So it had more than 2,000 more violent crimes than the second most violent city in Massachusetts. There was 18 murders in 2021. Only city in Massachusetts that had more murders was Boston, which only had 39. Boston is more than 6 times bigger than Springfield, and they only had about 20 more murders. And to put this in context of how safe Boston is compared to how it was in the 1990s, the late 80s and 1990s was when Boston was at its most dangerous peak. Even more violent than in the 1960s, which is probably surprising some people. In 1991, Boston hit its peak of 151 homicides. In 2021, there was only 39. So put that into context of what a different city Boston is. Besides, obviously, the traditional neighborhoods of where the gang violence is concentrated in Upper Roxbury, in Roxbury and Upper Dorchester, and then of course the human travesty that's going on Mass Ave and Melania Cass Boulevard down there, or like the whole squatter central. But Springfield takes the cake, like I said. It's just an extremely violent city. To anybody who lives in Massachusetts, this is no surprise. It was kind of an anticlimactic ending to the list because anybody who lives in Massachusetts knows that Springfield is by far the worst city. And I'm sorry for the residents of Springfield and the people that live there. I have a couple close friends that are from Springfield, and there's a lot of viewers of my channel and watch my videos that are from Springfield. I've done videos about the mob. The Italian American community is centered around the South End neighborhood in Springfield, and that's where the Mount Carmel Society, the Italian American Community Center there, where Big Al Bruno got whacked coming out of his Sunday night card game. It's traditionally been a Southern Italian Sicilian city. Now, of course, off the top of my head, I can't think of. There's like two main villages that the Italian American and Sicilian American residents of Springfield hail from. Um, but it's got a huge Latino population. There's actually almost like 15% of the city is like black as well. It's very mixed overall compared to like most Massachusetts cities, but Springfield and the overall area, like Chicopee and just Western Mass as a whole, is just unfortunately very depressed and crime ridden. And it has all the problems that go along with depressed cities, no economy, gangs, narcotics, just everything you can think of. It's all together in all these old industrial mill towns. And until something happens to change this, I don't see anything happening in the future. I feel like this list is going to just continue to be the same way. The same cities that are on the list basically make it year after year after year. They just kind of change positions on the list. But besides like the beautiful shining city of Boston and the Seaport District and all these high rises they're building and stuff like that, the majority of the western part of the city is very depressed. And like I said, most of the cities that ranked on this list are from out there. So I didn't mean any disrespect to the residents of Western Massachusetts. Just making a little bit of fun with some of these jokes and stuff. So please don't take it to heart. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, just trying to take up my time while I got a couple days off and my kids are at school during the day. I didn't feel like cleaning my apartment or pacing around, stressing out about the fact that I'm probably not going to make November's rent and my new landlords could give two craps about that. See you later. So if you guys like this video, hit that old like button, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, leave a comment, make a request. But most of all, guys, make good choices, make good decisions. Take good care of yourselves, your family, your loved ones, your fellow human beings. Have a great day. I'll talk to you guys soon. I'll be back next weekend with my usual mob video. God bless, guys.